David, thanks so much for joining me on the second Property Careers Bulletin podcast.
My absolute pleasure.
We've known each other now for, 6 months, would you say?
Yeah, sort of 6 months, maybe a little bit longer,
Yeah.
I'd say.
And I've done some work with your recruitment.
Absolutely, yeah.
So how have you found the last 6 months? How have you found the market over the last 6 months in general?
The market over the last 6 months, do you know what? Actually, relatively busy. I think we're going into that. We're recording this podcast at the end of October, so and we've got a budget looming in about sort of 5 or 6 weeks. We were talking about off camera, weren't we? And yeah, I think there's perhaps a little bit of uncertainty about what the Chancellor's got in store for us. So that can sometimes affect sort of activity levels. But from our point of view, we're busy. We've got a good pipeline.
Good.
And the phones are ringing, so
it's always a good place to be.
It's got to be a good thing, surely.
Not twiddling your thumbs, that's the worst bit, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
So, how do you start an agency? So, you've been in an agency for over 20 years now. You worked your way up from sales negotiator up to MD for Cavendish estate agents.
Yeah.
So, how do you get an interest into property, and how did you get to the point of being MD?
So I've actually been in estate agency actually for Cavendish for coming up to 24 years now. So I actually started at Cavendish when I was only 14. So my dad started the business.
Nice.
Back in 1993, and in 2002 I got a Saturday job, and my first role was basically in sales on a Saturday morning, and I used to replenish all of the sales particulars, because back then we had self-selection. So people used to come into the office, they'd pick up loads of property particulars, ranging from £30,000, to £1 million, put them all in the pocket, walk out the front door, and we'd never see them again. And it's times have changed so much now, because first of all, footfall is very small these days compared to then. But certainly now, if someone comes into one of our branches and they're looking for a property to buy, they very much, we're all over them. They get registered, and whereas back then, times were different. We had a lot of window shoppers, people that just came in the office, and perhaps they weren't even buyers. They just came into an estate agent's office to look at the pretty pictures. So I started on a Saturday. Fast forward a few years, I went to uni. And I did a real estate valuation and management course in Bristol.
Nice.
I only lasted a year, to be honest. After a year, I decided it wasn't for me. I wanted a full-time job, and I wanted to be an estate agent. So I came back home and I started full-time in sales as a sales negotiator. And then, sort of quickly going over the sort of timeline, I progressed to a trainee valuer, and then now we're talking sort of back into the recession now, sort of 2008, 2009. That job was going to be made redundant at that time. So I actually then took the opportunity to move over to lettings, and I became a lettings valuer, bringing on new landlords, and really found my niche in lettings, and did that for about 10 years before then eventually taking over as MD of the lettings business, and then a couple of years later taking over the whole thing.
What was it about property which got you excited? I know it's a family, or runs in the family, but what makes you excited about it? I suppose it's very, like we said, it's changed drastically over the last 20 years. But what are the things which excited you about getting into the industry?
I think what attracted me, and probably what retains me now, are probably two different things. And we always hear this sort of thing that it's all about property. Well, I would argue it's not about property; it's about people. And property is what we sell or let or buy. But it's a people business, and but a lot of people think, "Oh, I'll go and be an estate agent because I like looking around houses." But the reality is, if you're not a good people person and you don't like dealing with people, then it's not the business for you. It's very much a people business, I think. And I think as I've over the last 20 years, perhaps when I started, it was all about property, looking around property, nosing around people's properties. Whereas now, for me, it's very much it's a people business. That's what I love about it.
About building relationships, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So, what would you say the biggest change has been over the last sort of 20 years or 24 years in the industry? I know you mentioned, obviously, cards, dishing out to customers coming through the door, so footfall. What else would you say is the biggest change you've seen?
I'd probably say, change, I doesn't have to be a bad change. I think, change is positive. And I think something that's really helped change the industry has been tech. Automation, AI, obviously, AI probably only in the last couple of years though, really. And where are we going to? What's the industry going to look like in 5 years' time? I think it'll be pretty much unrecognisable to what we're seeing today. And I think there are perhaps still quite a lot of businesses, not just estate agents and letting agents, who perhaps haven't embraced tech yet or fully. But I think in the next couple of years there will become a point where those businesses really do struggle. I mean, we're very much early adopters of tech. We're not completely tech savvy. We're very much a traditional business. But the way I describe our business is we're a traditional business that is tech enabled. We're not a tech business. Solely relying on tech and AI. We are still very much the traditional model of estate agency. But I think tech has definitely changed the business massively.
So it's enhanced it, and it's made work quicker.
I think as well, people expect us to work longer hours and actually be available 24/7. Back when I started, the estate agency business, it was a 9 to 5 job. And yes, we were open Saturdays and Sundays back then. Whereas I think now, if you're selling a house, you expect to be able to WhatsApp your estate agent at 9 o'clock at night and get a reply. And now when people email each other, they want a reply within 10 minutes, don't they? So I think consumer behaviour has changed massively. It's almost like consumers want instant gratification. They want and I think that again is born from tech, but also behaviour. That everything is so instant these days. Now if you're hungry on a Friday night, you can order a takeaway from your phone. You don't even have to get off the sofa to get that. Everything's so instant these days. Whereas go back 10, 15 years ago, and the process to get to what you want or buy what you want was very much a longer process. There's benefits and positives in there.
No, definitely. I think it's, you can either be scared of it or embrace it. And I think, like you said, your business embraced it at an early start, and it's been the start of your business. So it's going to enhance it. It's not going to affect. It's just the way you work. It's only going to enhance your business.
Well, my biggest thing, I always hear this sort of quote, that AI is going to take your job. I honestly don't think that. I think AI, your job will be replaced by someone using AI. And what I mean by that is, that those people that embrace AI and technology, I think are going to be in a better position. And I think that agencies adopting, using AI, automation, I think that won't necessarily lead to lots of redundancies. I think it'll actually lead to us being able to spend more quality time with our clients. So I think in a world where we're so connected now, are we really connecting with people? Yeah, perhaps.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's one of those things. We always ask the question: Are we connecting with people? Are we delivering the best service possible? And if AI can help deliver that best service possible, then why not?
Well, for example, if we didn't have, tech, AI, using all the, if we didn't systemize our business, and ChatGPT wasn't a thing, I probably wouldn't have this time, to have this nice conversation with you. Because I'd be too busy stuck in the weeds of the business, basically doing everything and running around like a headless chicken. Whereas, the reality is, we've got a lot of systemization and processes in place in our business that allows us to spend good quality time, with partners like yourself, and also our clients, most importantly.
That's brilliant. How would you build a successful estate agency business in 2025? What would you say the main factors are?
Oh, great question. How would you build a successful estate agency in 2025? I think very differently to how you build a business 25 years ago. And I think something that I've very much adopted over the last couple of years since I took over Cavendish as MD was, well, if we were starting an estate agency tomorrow, what would we do? And it's like, okay, well, we do this, we do that differently. So it's like, okay, so why don't we do it? And a lot of business owners, I think, are very much, and we've been guilty of this in the past. And there's still things we do now that perhaps the reason we do that thing is because, well, we've done that for 30 years that way. So we can't change that now, can we? And I think, the reality is now you'd probably have less staff, probably outsource quite a few operations, I think. But I think, certainly that there are, without avoiding the question, I think that there are perhaps a lot of businesses that cling on to old processes that might have served them 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. And I think the real sort of my real answer is probably that you need to constantly be reviewing your processes and be very agile, so that if something does suddenly change, then you're ready for it. So just have a growth mindset and be constantly evolving and learning as well. Learning is a big thing for me. I a few years ago, I thought I knew everything about estate agency because I'd done it many years. I completed the estate agency job. I'd done every role. I'd done everything in lettings. I thought, there isn't anything you could teach me.
No.
It's just about getting more clients, surely. And then I remember discovering this whole other world of estate agents, letting agents, who are doing things very, very well and want to help other agents. And that's when I realised, God, you've got a lot to learn, David.
Yeah.
And now people would joke, I'm obsessed with learning. I'm constantly listening to podcasts, watching webinars, going to mastermind sessions with other agents, and I just want to learn everything, about how we can get 1% better every single day.
That's the thing, isn't it? You never stop learning. It's the same with recruitment. Unfortunately, in the industry, we tend to get stuck in our ways, and then we're like, "Oh, this is our process. This is how we source someone. This is a candidate which would be perfect fit for this business."
Yeah.
But actually, it's about thinking outside the box and learning, like you said, learning from other businesses, not even recruitment businesses, like estate agency businesses as well, and always be learning. Like you said, I'm always listening to podcasts.
Yeah.
Always working out. Actually, could I tweak? Did I deliver a good service in that avenue? How can I learn from that? If we don't learn, then we get stuck. And like we said about AI, then we do fall behind.
Absolutely, definitely.
So do you, because you've got different offices, you've obviously got Chester, Mould, and Ruthin as well.
Yeah.
Do you have to adapt your estate agency style in different areas?
Yes. So great question. In fact, we were talking about this in our monthly management meeting, because because we're a small agency. We've got 3 branches. We're not sort of 15, 20 branch firm, and I think certainly with corporates, there's a lot of systems and processes that are they're uniform for the entire for all branches. Whereas, and to be honest, we've tried to systemize and implement certain processes across the board, and actually, when we've done it, it hasn't actually worked. And the reality is, so we've got a Chester office, which is in a big city, Chester. We've got an office in Ruthin, which is a small market town, and then we've got an office in Mull, which is where we're sat at the moment, which is a bit of a hybrid. It's a bit in between. Sort of Ruthin is a little bit more, sort of rural. Mould is a bigger town, and what works in Chester doesn't work in Ruthin, and vice versa, and then Mould's sort of in between. So there's a lot of processes that we do in Chester, and perhaps because of the demographic of the people, so our demographic in Chester, I would say, are very transactional on the whole. The clients, it is more transactional, whereas in Ruthin and Mould, a lot of our clients would like to come into the office and have a cup of tea with us and have a chat, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think we build a lot more face-to-face relationships in the North Wales offices. So yes, we very much have to be very agile, and we've learned that the hard way by perhaps implementing processes across the board and realizing that isn't going to work. So again, just coming back to you've got to be agile in what you're doing.
Would you say the Chester office is very much volume turnover? Like you actually get the deal done onto the next customer, and you might deal with that customer in 3 years' time, and they looked at
absolutely
upsize.
Yeah, we have a lot of repeat business in all of our offices, but I'd say in terms of face-to-face contact, Chester's probably the least. And obviously we meet the client, when we go and value the house, etc. But I think there's a lot of business that happens over email and telephone at Chester, whereas there's a lot more face-to-face that happens in the North Wales offices, I would say. And there are less estate agents out in North Wales as well. Whereas if you go into, if you went on Rightmove, went onto Chester, there's probably 30, 40 estate agents. Whereas in Ruthin, we're one of 2. So I think you've got more chance there maybe to build more solid relationships with, and be almost part of the local community. I think that certainly in the Ruthin office, we are probably, I would like to think so, probably a big part of the local community. Whereas Chester, we're one of many, 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 many businesses.
Would you say that's how you build a successful office in those locations, just by literally being the go-to person, building relationships, bumping into the local person, the supermarket?
Yeah, and I think our content that we put out there from a marketing perspective has changed in the last couple of years, and there's a lot of estate agents who, when you read their content, whether it's on Facebook or the newspaper, let's say, or in their shop window, it'll be landlords wanted, or it'll be we need, we're the best estate agent to go to, buy our services. Whereas what we've done in the last couple of years is we've repositioned ourselves and almost like, okay, well, actually, rather than sort of asking for business in our marketing, why don't we just switch that around and actually just give more? So we're leading into something called the law of reciprocity, which is where you just give loads of value to people, loads of value, and almost position yourself as a thought leader, part of the community, because then it does come back. And the more, what I've learned is, the more you tell someone how to do a job and how to do it perfectly, the more chance they're going to turn around and say, actually, could you just do this for me? So that's something that we've changed massively. So if you look at a lot of our marketing, we're just giving loads of value to people. So we've got podcasts. We've got loads of digital guides. I wrote a book for landlords earlier this year, and we give that away for free. Because it's not about, for me. I wrote a book this year. It's not about selling books. We don't make much money out of selling books. It's we give that to landlords for free to build trust and show our credibility, because it does come back. So we do the same with everything. We're constantly giving that free value. And
I can guarantee you, no other agent's giving a book. You've written, like I said, I've written this book about landlords.
No,
and in the local area, but that's what makes you stand out. That's what
exactly.
gives you the edge.
Yeah, definitely.
And look, I had an interview last week with another business owner who built up a successful business and sold it off to another brand. And his question to you was, what's the biggest problem you face now?
Right now?
Yeah.
Do you know what? So interestingly, I'm this probably links very cleverly to yourself, as a recruitment partner, that something that's blown my mind recently is that, well, first of all, we had a conversation a couple of months ago where we were looking to hire for a role, and everyone we came across couldn't drive a manual car.
Yeah.
And that, I'll be honest, it's a 37-year-old who passed his driving test, 20 years ago. I was like, wow, really? But of course, I see, all of the cars you see, that are driving instructor cars, whatever they're called, they're all EVs, automatics, aren't they? So something that really opened my eyes up to, that the whole talent sort of search industry and sort of landscape has changed, where a lot of talent for entry level roles, they can't drive a manual car. Now all of our pool cars are manual.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, and they're all on 3-year leases. So it's like, okay, so that's a challenge. So it's like, okay, so we really need to be thinking ahead, like what, and that's something we didn't see coming. So it's like, okay, and that's tiny, that's a small challenge, obviously, but so what else is there that's coming our way? And something I think, that we've discussed as well before is that obviously we're dealing with a generation now, and I feel really old saying this now, that there's so many people now where we see CVs, they were born well after the millennium, and I think, oh my God, millennium is like 25 years ago. We've got people working for us who were born in like 2003, 2004, and I think now younger people, they don't necessarily want big careers where they'll start, they'll work down the mine, so to speak, from the age of 16, until they retire. There's a lot of people, I think, who will get a job and they'll get a couple of years experience and then they'll move on to something else. And there's nothing wrong with that, I don't think, because you're just gathering experience from multiple different jobs. And it might be jobs in completely different industries. And I just think the way perhaps, younger people, what they want to achieve out of their working life is very different now. So getting our heads around that and almost changing our business model. And I think, I think in the future, to some degree, for some roles, we almost need to be a bit of an academy, maybe.
Yeah.
But actually get the most out of that. Not think, because I think it'd be quite narrow-minded as a business owner to think, great, so we're gonna take on this new talent, we're gonna spend loads of money training them, etc. And then after 2 years, they're gonna bugger off and go and work for someone else. I think what we need to be thinking about is, well, how can we get the most out of that as well? Where we become an academy and change our business model. So I think that's something that business owners need to be thinking about.
I think as well, it stops. There's been a bit of a shortfall for training candidates coming into the industry over the last 3 years since COVID.
Yeah.
More people want experience. More people want, I suppose, value for money in the sense of what they're looking for. So they're looking for a senior negotiator, 22 grand basic, and they need to have banked 400 grand a year, which is fine. But we need to bring that fresh talent in, because those are the negotiators. These people are going to be the next generation negotiators in 2-3 years, and there'll be a recruitment shortfall in 5 years' time if we don't bring in new industry, don't think outside the box, like you were doing as well. Like you said, you're thinking ahead, you're thinking about, okay, what's going to help us with the longevity of our recruitment processes. Again, like we said, we partnered quite well together in the sense of,
absolutely,
I ask you questions, you ask me questions, and kind of bounce off each other, and we value each other's opinion. I think that's so important especially with recruitment, because then you can find the right talent. If your recruitment partner understands what your business is about, lives and breathes it, then you should be able to find the right talent and then future-proof your business, basically.
Well, for working with yourself, we quite a few of our new recruits over the last 12 months have actually been from outside of the industry. And I think we've been guilty of perhaps not, well, to be honest, we've rarely looked outside of the industry, but that is where a lot of the new talent is. I mean, one of our, at the time of the recording, one of our recent hires, who's doing, absolutely amazing at her job. She worked in the supermarket for 4 years, and she wasn't looking for a job, I don't think, at the time. And quite a lot of our hires weren't looking for jobs, and so I think just thinking outside the box, and you don't need to go stealing staff off of agencies, so to speak, because that's not always the best thing to do. And also we've struggled with this in the past, where perhaps we've taken on someone from another agent, but when they come over, yes, they've we 5 years experience, but what also comes over is 5 years of bad habits, perhaps, or a bias to, you can't charge 1.5%. We struggle to get 0.75 in our agency. So actually so there's a lot to be said about hiring from outside the industry. So if you train them the right way and say, look, when you go and list a house, you charge 2% and you'll get 2% every time. Some of those, people like that have been trained that way, can actually outperform people who've been in the industry for 30 years
100%.
Because they haven't got this attachment perhaps to what can be done. They've not got a limiting belief.
And that goes back to what we were talking about as well, as about adapting. You were saying about how we need to adapt, and unfortunately, like I said, people get stuck in ways of learning. This is how I do things, this is my process. And then when they join a new business, they're like, oh my God, I need to relearn everything. This is not right. That what I was doing there is not right. So no, I completely get it. In your view, how do you think the property industry needs to adapt? I think probably touched on a few points earlier anyway.
So what, for the future, or?
Yes, I would say to future-proof the industry, there's always a space for property, as you know.
But, absolutely. People always need to move.
Yes, but I think, how does the industry need to adapt? Is it salaries, would you say? Is it working hours? I suppose this goes into the point of recruitment. Is it how you do processes? I suppose you talked about academies. What would you say?
I think not enough estate and letting agents invest enough in training. Something we're very, very hot on is training. So we're members of training masterminds. So we've got one for sales, we've got one for lettings as well. So I spend a lot of my time going away and learning from the best in the industry, and then coming back and actually, yes, I am the MD, and I've got a great management team. But quite a lot of my role, I see myself as well as the visionary of the business, actually steering the ship, so to speak. What I love to do is go and learn from the best people in the industry, and then come back and then coach the team. So I almost see myself as a bit of a head coach. So do we so we do so much training with the team now that we're almost, put a name on it, and actually we've got an in-house coaching business. All of our new recruits now go through a 3-day boot camp. So it's a 3 full days of training, and then they have to complete. So they have to complete certain exercises, and training videos over a 12-week program. So it's not a case of you start on day one. If you've got any questions, let me know. and there is an induction, proper induction process, and then they've got to complete all the training, and then every single month we get them back in a room and then train them further. And then, most of our team now get regular training, pretty much every month. So because things change constantly, and I think for years a lot of businesses, they haven't done any training at all. And something we're really proud of is that so our lettings team, every week they get an hour personal development time.
Nice.
So every Thursday between 9 and 10, basically they can spend they come in the office an hour later, and they can go to a coffee shop or whatever they want to do, and they can listen to a podcast, watch a webinar, so long as it's something that is personal development wise, and it doesn't have to be work related. But we find that if you work out how many weeks a year the average member of the team works, thinking about the hours of CPD that we're giving them, we're some might think, they're coming into work an hour late every week, but actually what we're doing, we're investing in the knowledge and the personal development of our team, which ultimately upskills them, so we run a better business. So it's great investment, and
it gives them space as well. It gives breathing space, and they can. I feel like sometimes when you're constantly in it all the time, from when I started an agency, I was working from 8 till 7, 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And you're in it constantly. And when you take a little step back for an hour, like you said, have that time to develop, like you said, let's do a podcast. It gives you that time to breathe, understand what you're doing, readjust, and then come in with a fresh mentality.
Well, there's two things there. I think, first of all, it's you. Yeah. So I say this to other business owners: you've got to look outside the four walls of your own agency, because I think it's very common, perhaps for someone to come into an estate agent's office and go, "Oh, what's the market like?" And then for that agent, just to tell that person their KPIs and say, "Oh yeah, we've been really busy this week on viewings." Or I've heard a conversation once where someone said, "Oh, do you know what? The market's great. We've been so busy this week." But the reality is, she was so busy because her colleague was on holiday that week.
Oh,
so she was having all the phone calls. So that's what I keep on saying. Our business and other businesses, you've got to look outside the four walls of a estate agency of your own business. And I think on the podcast and self-development thing, a lot of our team, I hear them talking to each other, and they'll on a Thursday lunchtime when they've come back from their training, I overhear someone say, "Oh, do you know what? In my personal development hour tomorrow, I heard this really great podcast, and it was about this, and they'll share the ideas, and a lot of it is industry-related material on how we can be better every single day, how we can help serve clients better, how we can win more instructions, very, very important. So they actually then mastermind with each other and upskill everyone, so it's been a great thing to do, definitely.
Yeah, brilliant. And then we talked about a bit about why we're losing good trainees. I think we've hit the point there in the sense of, the industry needs to adapt in the sense of training, mentoring. I think working hours, you touched on the point there. I know you changed your working hours, didn't you, a while ago, 9 to 5 as well.
Yeah. So we asked everyone. So we were open 9 to 5:30 with 1 hour of lunch, and we asked everyone if we shortened the lunch hour to 30 minutes and closed at 5, would anyone have a problem with that? Thinking, there might be the old person who goes, "Well, do I like my hour lunch break?" Everyone went, "Yes, please." so now we open 9 till 5, half an hour break, and it works for our team, because a lot of businesses close at 5:30. So actually, in some respects, a lot of our team are beating the traffic as well. So they're actually getting home. They're not just getting home half an hour early. They're getting home, 45 minutes, 50 minutes earlier. Which is, I think, in particular, in the summer months, has gone down very, very well. Now we're approaching the autumn now. So it's dark by 4 o'clock anyway. So it doesn't make much difference. But no, I think especially if people have got kids as well. It could be you've got half an hour extra to go to the gym before picking the kids up, or maybe you pick up your kids up early and spend half an hour extra with them. I don't know. I think that giving them that extra half hour and having a shorter lunch break's gone down really well. And I think businesses, not everyone wants. If you ask members of your team, do you want a higher pay packet, or do you want more flexibility on this, or do you want this benefit, or do you want to go home early, or do you want it's not always, not everyone is chasing the money. I think now culture, without very much a buzzword, isn't it? Culture to a business is so important, which you're the best person to talk to about that. Obviously, doing what you do.
Yeah.
But not everyone. It's not all about the pretty penny. It's about all the benefits and the culture that goes with it.
I think you touched on a point there as well, in the sense of what people want out of their job now. Like when I was recruiting 7 years ago, people say, oh, I'm looking for an OT of 70 grand a year. I'm looking for an OT of 50, and I want 20% commission, and it was all about the money. I'm speaking to similar kind of people, and they're going, well, I like less hours. I want to have more time with my family. Yes, I want a
4-day week.
Yeah, 2-day week and the rest off.
2-day week and 100k. Yeah, that'd be nice.
But they want a bit more autonomy, in the sense of, they want to be home by 6, or that's. And when I always ask a candidate what are they looking for, it's amazing what's changed.
Yeah.
Yes, money is still a factor. You're in the wrong industry if you're not money motivated, in the sense of,
I agree.
Well, you're not used to KPIs. You're not driven in the sense of getting your next deal. You gotta be financially driven. And like you said, you got to be a people person. That's what it's all about.
God, yeah, definitely.
But it's interesting to see the shift in mindset.
Yeah, definitely.
Shift in mindset. And with the new potential legislations coming up, what would you say? How do you think it's going to impact the property industry?
Well, so there's 2 bits of legislation we can talk about, actually. So you got the Renters' Rights Bill for lettings. I think so speaking to other business owners here, massive opportunity.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of letting agents probably who are probably quivering at the moment, thinking, oh my God, we're going to lose loads of landlords. We're going to lose our business, and it's all not going to go very well. But I would argue the change in legislation, it's an opportunity. There's a lot of landlords who need your support right now. So you've got to be educating your landlords. We do quarterly landlord webinars. You've got to position yourself as the thought leader, the educator, and the expert. So I think certainly with things like with the Renters' Rights Bill, huge opportunity, absolutely huge opportunity for letting agents, to step up.
Yeah.
With regards to estate agency, so it was announced a couple of weeks ago now about estate agency reform, and I think one of the pieces that's been talked about is the seller packs, which part of HIPS, which I think was 2008, I think from memory, which I don't think the market was ready for back then. I think now, having upfront information, I think would be a good thing. And actually would speed up the sale process. At the time of recording, the average, because we crunch the data, the average time to move house now is just over 200 days. I think it was 211 days off the top of my head from putting your house on the market to actually completing.
Yeah,
which is bonkers. That's crazy. I mean, when I started in the industry, every sale went through in about 6 to 8 weeks, whereas now it's like the average time to get a sale through is 5 months. So I think upfront information, whether a pre-sale survey, I don't know, you like to hear some more information on that. Reservation agreements, I'm a big advocate for. Getting all clients legally prepared. So I'm interested. I know it's only been just announced. There's probably a lot of proposals and things that will change and be discussed. But I think the industry does need reforming, and I think something that's been on the cards. I don't know how many years now. Which is ROPA, where everyone has to be qualified. I'm all for that because there's a lot of agencies out there who don't do things to the same standard. To perhaps agents like us, we invest a lot in our training. We do from a compliance point of view. We run a very tight ship, and there are some agents that let the industry down, I think. So I do think estate agency reform will be a good thing for the industry, and ultimately, I think the actual moving process will go down because of that. It's got to be a good thing, I think.
No, change is always good. Sometimes people are scared of change.
I mean it's progress.
Yeah,
isn't it?
One step forward.
People don't like change that they're not in control of.
And
I get that. And my job as MD of the company, I could probably get a bit of flack, because I like to change things, but I don't actually like change personally.
No.
Personally, I like to know where I'm going and what I'm doing. But businesses must evolve, and you've got to progress. And I think in the market we're in at the moment, if you don't change and keep up with what's going on, you're only going to find yourself going backwards.
Yeah.
So sort of going back to what we were first talking about at the beginning, if you're an estate agency, business owner, you've got to be agile. You've got to be current. And I think one of my favourite quotes that I heard probably about a year ago, and it was talking about learning and about being relevant, and it was saying that when someone says, "Oh, I've got 20 years experience," well, is it 20 years experience, or is it 1 year's experience repeated 20 times?
Yeah.
So I think that we are big advocates for learning, and I think there are perhaps a lot of not just estate agents but businesses that perhaps haven't evolved in the last 10, 15, 20 years. So I think business owners got to be agile and always learning.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then I've got 2 final questions for you.
Go for it.
So my first one is, what would you tell yourself when you first started the industry? What advice would you give yourself when you first started the industry?
So what advice would I give to my actual self when I started? For me, So if I could go back in time in the DeLorean, let's say, and go back, do you know what? I'd probably say to myself, trust the process, and actually just trust your instinct. And yes, there will be setbacks, but you'll get there in the end. For me, it's been a journey. It's not always been rosy. There's been lots of setbacks, and there's been challenges along the way. But I think if I was speaking to my 14-year-old self in that office in Chester replenishing the sales particulars, I'd go, do you know what? You're going to have a lot of fun. There's going to be some dark days, but trust the process.
I think
that's what I'd say.
Well, that's really good. I'm glad you said that, because sometimes when you're a recruiter as well, it's the same thing. It's like, trust the process. You know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Just gotta. Sometimes it won't always work, but you got to go with it. And
but if it doesn't work, it's I've done a lot of work on my mindset, which you can probably tell. But so I always try to see the positive in things.
Yeah, good.
Any negative, things that happen, it's I was asked, what can we learn from this? And sometimes learning costs money. Yeah. And it takes a bit of discomfort maybe, to learn something. Yeah. And also from difficult conversations generally comes good. Yes. Sometimes there's a difficult conversation to be had, but on the other side of that difficult conversation, usually there's a lot more clarity. And I think a lot of people are guilty perhaps of not wanting to take that sort of leap. So I going back to what I said before, trust the process. Just it'll be all right.
Be fine. And then my final question to you is, what question do you have for my next guest? I saw there's some Stephen Bartlett. What question do you have?
Do you know what? I'm going to do a tricky one.
Go on.
What's your biggest criticism of yourself?
Interesting.
And why?
Okay.
As from a professional point of view.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't want to get too deep. But what if you were looking at yourself, what's your biggest criticism do you need to stop right now? Like bad habit, let's say.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. I'll let them know, and I'll let you know how what the answer is.
Yeah, they do. Thank you very much.
David, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it, and being part of the Property Careers Bulletin, and thanks again.
Thank you very much.